Okay, what's going on, everybody? With the Lost Ark beta just around the corner, I thought there'd be no better time to make this video. I've been playing Lost Ark nearly every single day for the past 3 months, and I've dumped over 400 hours into the game. Now, there is so much misinformation surrounding this game that I wanted to make a video to explain to you my experience so far and give you an idea what the game is like to find out if it's a game for you. Now, this may be a longer video, so I will have timestamps listed below so you can kind of skip around the video. I'll start off the video by going over who this game is for and who it may not be for, and then I'll dive into each of the systems in the game and what the game is like overall in a more in-depth process. Alright, so really quickly, who is this game for? This game is going to be for someone that likes fast-paced PvP and PvE content that's rather difficult. It's also going to be for people that like and enjoy making alts. If you're not a big person into making alts, this may not be the game for you, as they regularly release classes every couple of months, and on top of that, having an alt in this game is an excellent way to make gold, and it will benefit you in the long run. You also may have noticed that this game is an isometric MMO, and I know for some people that may be a turnoff. I can tell you personally, it feels really good in a lot of the fights, and you'll learn about that more later. But also, I had a lot of experience playing games like Warcraft 3, League of Legends, Heroes of Newerth, Heroes of Storm, and other isometric games that got me already accustomed to this specific game style. So it may not be something for you, but it is something to keep in mind. This game is also for people that really do like progression. There's a lot of work that goes into your server or account, so a veteran player will really stand out depending on how much time they've spent playing the game versus a newer player. So if you like that long-term progression, you will definitely find it in this game. But if you don't like that feeling of putting in a lot of time or effort into your account, you can still get away and just enjoy the game as a more casual player, but it definitely benefits the player who puts in a lot of time into the game. Now, with it being an isometric MMO, it's also an Eastern MMO, so I know for a lot of people, they have like this I guess I'll just say it, weeb approach to video games, and I don't, I totally respect that. I totally get it. For me, I grew up playing MapleStory and Dragon Ball Z. There's tons of different types of artwork in the game that may be awesome to some people and not so much to others, but I wouldn't say the game is necessarily weeby. It's just something to consider. And finally, the game is free to play, so we'll talk about what that might mean for the game's monetization model at the end of the video. All right, now let's dive into the nitty-gritty stuff. The leveling experience in Lost Ark. The leveling experience in the game is honestly better than most MMOs. There is an obscene amount of cutscenes, a lot of voice acting, and a lot of story to be had on your first time leveling through the game. I wouldn't say the game has the most diverse type of questing, but what I will say is the scenarios and story dungeons that you go through, you will have a lot of oh shit moments when playing the game. It's pretty epic, especially your first time going through it. However, the leveling process isn't necessarily very long. You can get through it in about a day or two depending on your experience playing the game. But what I will say is that the game is heavily end game focused. So if you're more of a person that's really about the journey while leveling and not so much about the journey when going through the end game, it may not be the game for you. It's not like a New World experience. I would say it's a much more, I wouldn't really know how to compare it to other games, but what I can say is that it's more about the end game more than the experience while leveling, and there's a lot of story to be had at the end game. Now, with the leveling experience, I want to talk about the immersion in the world and how that kind of plays out. So what I will say is that Lost Ark has a massive, massive world. There are a ton of continents that will be unlocked over time, and there are also a lot of islands to explore. So when it comes to the open worldness of the game, there is sailing content that exists in the game. You get a boat early on and you will upgrade this ship for different types of content, and you can explore the world. And currently on the version I'm playing, there are over 90 islands that exist in the game, and nearly all of these islands have their own unique storylines, mini games. One of them has like the Island of Metis. I don't want to spoil too many of them, but one of them has like a Resident Evil Plasmaphobia like mini game where you're going through a haunted mansion and finding out what happened, and you get rewarded for doing these types of islands. So if you are a completionist type of person, you can actually earn a lot of cool rewards and rewards that will benefit you in the end game if that is your type of content, and that is completely open world for the most part. However, the continents themselves are more like Final Fantasy and less like New World. The maps are large, however, you will go through portal-like things when you go into the next zone, so it's not completely open world. So if you do like open world content, you can find some of it, but it won't be like New World, for example. Now, I know a lot of you guys do watch me for PvP content, and PvP is why I started playing Lost Ark in the first place, because it had an arena mode, and I obviously, playing WoW for so many years, love the idea of a 3v3 arena mode. The PvP in this game is very fun, and in fact, I would say it's one of the best MMO experiences I've had for PvP in a really, really long time. I would say it's probably one of the best experiences you can find outside of WoW, although I think World of Warcraft PvP currently is just complete ass. But in general, I would say it's a very good experience, but it's rather complex and it won't feel like World of Warcraft. It's like a mixture of a fighting game with some World of Warcraft elements, with some League of Legends elements in terms of how the combat feels. It is a steep learning curve, but you can get over that by watching some guides. And there is a lot of outplay potential. You have solo queue ranked 3v3. You also have 1v1 modes where you have 2 teams of 3 and you vote who goes out next, and you can 1v3 the entire team. And you also have a leaderboard, end of season rewards, anything that you would come to expect. But more importantly, if you're someone that just likes doing PvP, you do not need to do any type of PvE content at all. In fact, you can start PvPing, I believe, at level 26 or 27, and you don't have to do anything. You get to customize your stats completely in any way that you want, choose your ability layout, and there is no gear required. It's completely equalized. For those of you that just like doing PvP, you can definitely have a lot of fun playing Lost Ark. Now, for those of you interested in PvP, there's also going to be a community-run tournament that will be taking place during the beta, and I'll have some information here on the screen that you can check out, and you can watch this tournament to see what the end game competitive PvP is like if you're interested in that, and you can find more info on that as well in the description. Now, although I got into the game for PvP, I ended up trying out the PvE like 1 month into the game, and I was absolutely hooked. The PvE content in Lost Ark is nuts. It's absolutely nuts, from the Chaos Dungeons, which are like your Diablo-style Rift content, to the Guardian Raids, which is more like Monster Hunter content, to all of the other things that you can do in the game. I won't name them all. There's so much of it to do, especially as the game releases more and more into the tier. And the actual raids themselves are some of the best raids I've ever done. And I know that's quite the statement, but I honestly believe that coming from Mythic Raiding and WoW. Raids in Lost Ark are so fun because, number one, there aren't any add-ons to assist you. Number two, I've been doing them all blind, by the way, which has made it way more enjoyable. My chat makes fun of me a lot for it because they tell me it's going to be easy, and then I spend like 4 hours in the raid, and they'll make these memes of me. But with that, there are no add-ons, and even if you know the mechanics, it's heavily execution based. So there's a lot of individual responsibility in these raids, and the fights just feel epic. I mean, they genuinely feel epic. I'll show some footage here. We don't have that countering Warlord of QB. I think this is a safe spot. I hope so. Yeah. Counter that Uncle Encore, you baboon, man! You baboon! More importantly, though, all of the prestigious titles in the games are from the Hell Mode Legion raids, which we'll get at some point, the Heroic Guardian raids. You don't have to know these terms, but these are equalized versions of the content that are extremely challenging with additional mechanics. And overall, I found the game to be very fun. It's like a mixture of Monster Hunter mixed with Final Fantasy and WoW level mechanics, and I think so many of you can find enjoyment in the PvE content in Lost Ark, even if you're not someone that actually likes PvE content. It just feels different in this game, and the combat definitely adds to that. Now, speaking of the combat in Lost Ark, the combat in this game out the gate is crazy. Like right away, it is just, I think other MMOs have decent combat, but the combat in this game is so much fun. Once you get into the game, you're able to test out various classes that you're going to choose, and there's just like an impact behind your abilities. You really hear the sounds when you, it's hard to explain, you just have to try it for yourself. But a lot of people talk about how New World has great sound, and you'll see. That's the best way I can phrase it. You'll absolutely love the combat in this game if you are someone that is accustomed to the camera angle, and it makes all of the content, the leveling, the PvP, and the PvE just feel that much more epic, and the visual effects are pretty crazy as well. So the combat in this game is definitely a plus, and it will be the highlight of the game for a lot of people. It's definitely not going to be the game for people that like a more minimalist level of class customization. There are a lot of different builds and things that you can do. You have gems, you have runes, you have tier set bonuses, you have like different little talent trees that you can enhance through your gear. There's so much that goes into the game in terms of customization. I wouldn't say it's like as crazy looking as PoE with that galaxy brain map. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. So if you're not used to that type of level of customization, it may be a bit overwhelming at first, but I do believe, for me at least personally, it does add to the game. It makes it a lot more interesting trying out different builds for various classes. Now, really quickly, I did want to touch on the casual content that exists in the game, because I know for a lot of people, you don't have hours to spend playing video games every day anymore. And there is a lot of casual content to be had. I did touch on the idea that you can go out and explore these various islands, and there's progression systems there. There's also progression systems within your housing system, and you can make a lot of gold by really exploring that system. Additionally, you can really deck out your estate by adding in mazes. People go crazy with this stuff. They have paintings, statues that they've earned. Also, they make them thematic based on the season. I mean, it's pretty crazy in that aspect. And there's also zone completion that benefits your character. That's not something that I regularly do because it's not something that I'm interested in. But if it is something you're interested in, you can have a lot of fun in Lost Ark doing those types of things. All right, I know that was a lot of information really fast, but let's talk about the monetization model and the progression model in Lost Ark, because there's so much misinformation out there that I want to get this info out there so you can make the decision for yourself and so you can understand it for yourself. First of all, everything I'm about to say is completely subject to change, because in the version I'm playing on, which is the Eastern version of the game, it may be completely different than what we get in the West based on Amazon's release. With that being said, I think it's a good idea to know how the game works currently. First of all, you do not have to spend any money in Lost Ark whatsoever to play the game. It's completely free to play. More so, you don't have to buy any of those founders packs that they're selling online unless you want to play the beta, for example. But you don't need any of that stuff. Don't hate me, Amazon Game Studios, but a lot of that stuff that you'll get in those little chests that you get, there's tons of events that go on all the time that will reward you with a lot of that stuff for just free. So you don't need any of that stuff unless you want some of the skins and pets and things like that. However, the game does have a monetization model, and the way that they make money in this game, number one, is through their cosmetics and skins. There are a lot of skins that they really go all out on. In fact, they have these community-run tournaments or contests where players will submit their artwork that they spend a lot of time on. The community will then vote on the winner, and the winner will be selected to have their mount or skin that they crafted up be placed into the game. However, it's important to note that all of those skins, like I mentioned earlier, you don't have to spend any money. You can buy those skins off the market, off the auction house, for just gold. You don't have to spend any money on those if you don't want to. Additionally, though, the game does have a WoW token based system. Okay, this is where a lot of the confusion comes into the game. The game works very similar to World of Warcraft without a box cover cost or a subscription fee. Now, the WoW token in World of Warcraft hasn't added any type of inflation. It's a transaction of gold, and what it really does is a player that has gold that maybe they've earned through Warlords of Draenor, because it's kind of hard to make gold in WoW unless you're doing carries or, doing BOE farming. A player that has gold wants game time, and a player that wants gold will buy a WoW token from Blizzard, put it on the auction house, and there's an exchange there where the player that wants game time gives them their gold essentially for them to play the game. However, in Lost Ark, it's free to play, so there is no game time, and this is where the confusion starts to happen. Now, you will hear a lot of things online about players talking about pay-to-win pets or extra loot at the end of the dungeon if you pay real-life money. You do not spend real-life money on these things, and I'll explain to you more so how they work. These systems are how they get players to interact with this WoW token system to keep that transaction going, and they're more quality of life features than anything except the loot thing, and I'll explain that. So the pet feature is no different than your Longboy mount or the Yak mount that you buy in WoW for 50,000 gold to 4 million gold that will act as mobile storage or a mobile mailbox or a mobile auction house. You get a pet at level 12. And then at the end game, when you start doing the end game content, you will then expand this pet feature for 120 blue crystals, and it will act as that Longboy mount. On my version, that feature costs 120 blue crystals or 650-ish gold at the time of recording. 650 gold is really nothing in compared to how much I make. So I make anywhere from 20 to 50,000 gold a week. This pet feature lasts 1 month to keep players regularly interacting with the system and also to create a gold sink in the game to prevent inflation, which I'll touch on a bit later. The extra loot at the end of the dungeon that you hear about is something that, again, you'll interact with when you're doing end game raids. When you're doing end game dungeons and raids, When you complete a raid, you get a raw gold payout for doing the raid. They just pay you gold for finishing it depending on how many bosses you cleared. You get some accessories, but more importantly, you get mats to craft your end game tier set. Now, these sets require these mats, and if you give up some of your gold, you convert that to blue crystals, and you give up some of your gold as a gold sink, you'll get like an additional wing or tail or horn to craft your set. So it's not something that you're paying real life money for. It's really no different than preparing for a raid and spending money on consumables, your gold. It doesn't cost a lot of gold, and in fact, the payout that you receive at the end of the dungeon is more than you would spend in terms of gold on getting the extra loot. Once you've collected all of the loot, you no longer take this option. When you see blue crystals, your mind instantly needs to start thinking about it as gold, and that's how they create that interaction between the WoW token and the person that has gold. Keeping all of that in mind, I want to talk about the progression system and gold making. In Lost Ark, everything that you do in the game, especially as you get into tier 2 and tier 3 content, will start to generate gold. In fact, in Korea, one of the issues that they have is an inflation issue because of all the gold printing, not because of the WoW token, again, because that's an exchange of gold. Inflation happens when you print gold. And the printing of the gold comes from these endgame dungeons, any quests that you do, and any raids that you do. And because of this, they have to create gold sinks in the game to fight back against this inflation that's currently happening. Now, getting your gear in Lost Ark is not RNG based whatsoever in terms of your actual tier sets. You go into the raid, you know how many mats you're gonna get per week, and then you craft your set. However, upgrading your gear is where the RNG lies in the game, as it's an upgrade system similar to BDO. However, in BDO, it's much more punishing. If you've ever played BDO, when you fail an upgrade, the item breaks down and you're kind of screwed and pissed off. And in fact, there's a pity system that exists in the game that if you fail enough times in upgrading your gear, especially as you start getting to the higher item level, you will automatically get a free 100% upgrade if you failed enough times, because the game essentially feels bad for you for failing so many times. One of the things that I wanted to talk about in Lost Ark that I learned kind of the hard way is that item level is not the end all be all in Lost Ark. And in fact, it's one of the least effective ways of progressing your character. There are other things outside of item level that progress your character, like runes, skill points, and other systems like that are server and account wide that will benefit all of your characters. I'll dive more into this in a future video because it requires me to spend more than just how long this video will be to discuss all of these different avenues of progressing your character. But what I will say is that's a general understanding of how the game works overall, and I hope it gives you some insight into how the monetization and the gearing and progression system works in Lost Ark. Now, with saying all of that, overall, I would say Lost Ark is one of the best MMOs I played in a really long time. It's a damn good game despite some of the cons that do exist in the game currently. Is it the game for everybody? No. I'm not a tribalist Andy that will tell you you have to play this game, and if you don't like this game, you don't know what good games are. That's not going to be me. But I honestly do think some of the pros heavily outweigh the cons in terms of the upgrading and monetization, because the content in the game is just that damn good. And I will be covering the beta on November 4th, so if you have any questions whatsoever, you can leave them in the comment section below, or you can check out my live stream that I stream every day on at 12 p.m. PST, somewhere here on the screen. Additionally, I will have links to other content creators and other people that I've learned from that have reliable information, because I did struggle finding that information when I first got into the game. Now, for those of you that are wondering when I'll be covering Final Fantasy or Guild Wars 2, I will get into that in a future video. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing so I can stop lying to my mom about my sub numbers. It's starting to get really embarrassing. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.